With an overwhelming amount of nutrition information available, from peer-reviewed journals to magazine covers to website forums and blogs, it can seem almost impossible to choose what foods are the best to eat, let alone when you should be eating them. One really fit friend, someone who you assume knows what they're talking about, tells you to cut out carbohydrates, to eat protein 6 times per day, while you just read some science in a magazine saying carbs are essential, too much protein may hurt you, and maybe you should only eat 3 meals per day. So where do you even start? Well, in the field of performance nutrition, new science comes out daily, which is a good thing because it shows that the subject is progressive and dynamic and it's not defiant to change. But it can also be overwhelming because what you thought was best for you yesterday is probably contradicted today. And too often media outlets leave out many of the details that are absolutely critical to the outcome from the research study. For example, I just read a research article where the average caloric intake of the participants in the study was right around 6,000 calories per day, and they all lost weight. So what if the magazine headline read, "Eat 6,000 calories per day and lose weight"? I mean, it sounds pretty good, right? Well, what I didn't tell you was that the study was done on cyclists during just one day of the Tour de France, where they expended that many calories or more. And that's a big difference, right? This shows that the details of the research matter. And for this lecture, we will tackle the questions of when and how many times you should eat throughout the day and in and around exercise, especially to improve body composition. And without even considering what you should be eating, the concept of nutrient timing, or quite simply, when you should be eating, can seem pretty complex. But let's start at the most basic level right now. If I asked you if you should drink water during a long, hot jog in the heat, or wait until after your jog to drink water, you probably already know that nutrient timing is important. In this case, timing your water to take during your run would be most helpful. Well, nutrient timing can be applied to all sorts of aspects of eating and drinking to achieve optimal body composition. You know that the RDA for protein is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight to stave off disease. And for sake of making this easy, let's round 0.8 grams per kilogram to 1.0 grams per kilogram. Then let's say you have a 75 kilogram man, or roughly 165 pounds, and he consumes all of the recommended 75 grams of protein on a daily basis. Fantastic. Sounds spot on, right? Now, what if I told you that he consumed all 75 grams of that protein during his 6 a.m. breakfast? Does this change your opinion? Does it still sound great to you? Well, probably not. And the whole point here is that we all intuitively know that when you eat, your nutrient timing is an important factor. The purpose of this lecture is to discuss the different components of nutrient timing and to shed some light on which tactics seem to work best for body composition and performance. Now, before we get started, a key note to keep in mind throughout this lecture is that although there are common recommendations that exist, nutrition itself is very individualized. And what works for one person may not work for another person as well. And a person's goals like weight loss, an endurance race, or a bodybuilding competition will alter optimal nutrient intake. If you're like most people, then you probably wonder what to eat before or after your workout, or if a sports drink is something you should be sipping on at the gym. Well, timing when to eat our meals around exercise is important for many reasons. We need energy to fuel our workouts, perhaps even multiple bouts in one day. But at the same time, we don't want to eat too much or too close to a training session, or you may experience gastrointestinal issues that can make you feel terrible and ruin your workout. We're all aware that exercise can be tough enough as it is, so you don't want any additional issues. Now, before we really dive into the details of pre, during, and post-exercise nutrition, you should know that nutrient timing is an overarching idea that encompasses a variety of strategies that may be directed towards performance, recovery from strenuous exercise, improving body composition, or a combination of all three. So what should you do before exercise? Let's start with the obvious. You need the fuel and energy to exercise. Simple enough. Your body needs at least some fuel in the tank to perform optimally. Glycogen, which is the storage form of carbohydrates in the body, is the main fuel source during moderate to vigorous exercise. So it stands to reason that carbs are important pre-exercise nutrients, right? These energy stores are sometimes the limiting factor in exercise, and running out can be the cause for bonking or hitting the wall, as many long-distance exercisers can tell you about. Essentially, you run out of fuel and your tank is empty. Thus, it is recommended that consuming carbohydrates prior to exercise will fill up the tank. And this is usually talked about as carb loading. But how much? Well, it depends on your purpose and what level of activity you are doing. Recently, I was in Tennessee to watch the Ironman Chattanooga, an event where athletes swim 2.4 miles, bike 112 miles, and then run 26.2 miles. An amazing feat. Is carb loading important to these athletes? You bet it is. Most of these athletes compete at a high intensity for anywhere between 8 and 14 hours continuously. So not only is pre-exercise an important nutrition component, but so is during and post-exercise nutrition. During these races, athletes depend upon sports drinks and gels, pre-made sandwiches, and all sorts of foods that the athlete can eat without getting an upset stomach and that they can carry with them while riding a bike or running. No wonder nutrition is considered the fourth event, along with swimming, biking, and running, for triathletes. Many leading sports nutritionists instruct these athletes to take up their carbohydrate consumption to about 70% of their diet 5 to 7 days before a competition by adding things like oatmeal, rice, pasta, and bread to almost every meal. However, does this really apply to the average person? To answer that, ask yourself if you exercise that much. Chances are that you don't, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. These people are exercising anywhere from 10 to 20 or more hours per week. But how should you change your pre-exercise nutrition if this carb loading isn't necessary for your average 30-minute jog or spin class at the gym every Tuesday? Frankly, the details of optimal pre-exercise nutrition strategies are less important to the average person. That's not to say that pre-exercise nutrition is not important. It most certainly is. However, simply getting in some good nutrition sources with carbohydrates and protein is all I would suggest concentrating on. I see time and time again people making the relationship between exercise and nutrition much more difficult than it really needs to be. In my experience with sports nutrition consulting, I have seen the greatest results in performance and body composition changes when things are simplified. And this crosses over all types of clients that I've worked with, from age group triathletes to Olympians. So just get in some good carbs and protein, ideally 3 to 4 hours before exercise. Be conscious of total calories that you are taking in and burning during exercise so that you don't end up overeating or adding too much to your total caloric intake and ultimately hurting your body composition or performance goals. You could simply eat 2 eggs and a banana or have a glass of milk. Also, I know many people who prefer to work out in the morning before they eat breakfast. If that's you and you like that, then go for it. But if you work out for more than 90 minutes or at a vigorous intensity, you might consider fueling up a little and see how it makes you feel. What about during exercise? Have you ever seen people carry Gatorade with them to a 5K race or Huge jugs of sports drinks at the gym when only running on a treadmill for 20 minutes at a steady, moderate pace? Well, a common misconception is that you need these sugar-filled drinks to rehydrate no matter what type of exercise you are doing. However, if you are exercising for less than 60 to 90 minutes, all you really need to worry about is water. No extra calories needed. Remember, the muscle glycogen we talked about earlier and how it is the primary fuel for your body with hard exercise. Well, 1 hour of high-intensity exercise will only burn through about half of those glycogen stores. So while your favorite sports drink might taste delicious, for exercise of these shorter durations, consumption of sports drinks during the exercise itself will not really be beneficial to you. And if you're trying to lose weight and improve body composition, then these are really just added calories in the form of sugar that you don't really need. In my time doing sports nutrition research and working with sports nutritionists and collegiate athletes, it is amazing how improvements in body composition occur even in college-level athletes by monitoring nothing else but their sports drink consumption. The problem is that it tastes great, and most people think that they need it to replenish. Don't get me wrong, it can help, but consuming these throughout the day and in excessive amounts is not only impractical, but it may also hurt your performance and body composition. That being said, sports drinks aren't evil. In certain situations, they are needed, but the details matter too. Who is it? What exercise? How long? And how intense? If you are participating in long-distance or time-consuming endurance events like marathons, then you certainly need to replenish your body with additional calories during exercise. And sports drinks are a great way to do this. For endurance exercise that's longer than 60 to 90 minutes, general recommendations for athletes are to take in between 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour during exercise to extend performance. For example, you'll get about 50 grams of carbohydrates from 2 medium-sized bananas or 2 cups of most cereals or sports drinks. Now, I want to note that 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour is a pretty wide range. The reason this is such a wide range is that everybody is different. Some stomachs can't handle the higher end of this range and will have GI issues or feel bloated. That definitely won't help their performance. For example, one of my colleagues is working with a former collegiate athlete who has a very sensitive stomach when racing in college, to the point of not being able to consume any nutrition within 2 hours of racing. But now, at the age of 30, he can handle the upper end of this 30 to 60 gram range while exercising. I bring this up to illustrate a few points about during exercise nutrition. Everybody is different. It truly is a trial and error process to what fueling strategy works best for you based on your goals. To further that point, if you can only tolerate the lower end of 30 to 60 gram range, that doesn't mean that you are a worse athlete, and your stomach, just like your muscles, can be trained. In fact, this is a very hot topic of conversation with elite endurance athletes globally right now, as some people are suggesting that select individuals may be able to train their body to take in north of 80 grams per hour with extensive training. This would be well more than 2 large bananas and a large sports drink per hour while exercising. This emphasis on eating carbohydrate during exercise becomes even more important if you have not carbohydrate loaded, not consumed pre-exercise meals, or have restricted energy intake for a weight and fat loss purpose. Along these same lines, do you know what type of carbohydrate you should eat before and during exercise? Well, the common recommendation is to eat a fast-digesting or high glycemic index carbohydrate during activity. These include foods and drinks like sports beverages, pre-made gels, and whole foods like bread, jelly, and fruit. One note of caution is that high fructose products, like some sports drinks, and foods like actual fruit, can lead to an upset stomach and even diarrhea. And most sports drinks have a combination of fructose and glucose, and you just need to experiment with them to see what works for you. My lab is actively researching this area, and we are testing all types of carbohydrates and modified carbohydrates for their effectiveness. Again, I wouldn't even consider these carbohydrate drinks if you're not exercising for any more than 60 to 90 minutes. They simply aren't needed in that scenario. Now, we've talked about protein prior to exercise, but protein during exercise is important as well. Decades of research has shown a carbohydrate and protein mix improves performance and lengthens time to exhaustion during endurance exercise when compared to just carbohydrate alone. These studies have all used sports drink products that include carbs and protein. Just check the nutrition facts label to see if your favorite drink has both carbohydrates and protein. Now, one complaint that I often hear from both clients and students is that sports nutrition and exercise physiology concentrate too much on endurance sports. Well, let's talk about resistance training, since most of you will likely be doing a combination of both cardio work and resistance training. At least I hope so. That is the general recommendations that you are to include both. The fact is that the media pushes protein and resistance training so much that many people think you only need protein during resistance training. But carbs are important too. A natural response to any stressful situation, including exercise, is to produce a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol has many actions in your body, and it is necessary for optimal functioning. However, too much cortisol, and particularly chronically elevated cortisol, can break down your lean muscle tissue. But eating carbohydrates can help to minimize the production of cortisol during exercise. I'll explain this. One research study had participants complete 60 minutes of resistance training while consuming one of 3 beverages: a 6% carbohydrate solution, like most sports drinks on the shelves these days, a 6% carbohydrate plus 6 grams of essential amino acid solution, or a placebo beverage. And they found that serum levels of cortisol, a stress hormone that contributes to the breakdown of your lean muscle, increased 105% in the placebo group, while the carbohydrate group increased only 11%, and the carbohydrate plus essential amino acid group had only a 7% increase in cortisol. These results suggest that consuming carbohydrate in combination with protein will provide the most benefits during resistance exercise. And we've seen this in the research for endurance exercise too. You'll optimize muscle glycogen, encourage better results, and help repair muscles by using a carbohydrate and protein beverage. It's funny how far apart the resistance and endurance exercise seem, but how similar the nutritional requirements are for them. Even though there are small differences in the details of what to eat and how much to eat before and during endurance and resistance training, both carbohydrates and proteins are important for optimal performance and body composition. Now that we've discussed pre and during exercise nutrition, let's take a look at post-exercise nutrition. The post-exercise period is widely considered the most critical part of nutrient timing. Theoretically, consuming the proper ratio of nutrients immediately following exercise can initiate the rebuilding of damaged muscle tissue and restoration of energy reserves. This may enhance both body composition and exercise performance. The entire concept of consuming nutrients immediately post-exercise for maximal gains is often referred to as the window of opportunity, or your anabolic window. Generally, this anabolic window is considered to be within 30 to 60 minutes after your workout. But is this anabolic window as small as we think? Do we need to rush to the protein powder or smoothie station as soon as we drop a weight or get off the treadmill in order to maximize muscle protein synthesis and recover fully? Or for that matter, does it even matter at all? Is it really a window of opportunity? Let's start by looking at general recommendations for replenishing your fuel stores post-exercise. The first issue is that your rate of muscle glycogen resynthesis, or how quickly you can restock your stored glucose in your muscles and liver after you've depleted them during exercise. Eating carbohydrates within 30 minutes of finishing your exercise seems to result in a greater rate of muscle glycogen resynthesis than if you delay eating carbohydrates by just 2 hours. The benefit to eating quickly after a workout is thought to be due to your muscles being more insulin sensitive at this time. This means that your muscles make more efficient use of insulin immediately after exercise. Some studies have suggested that up to 1.5 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight, or 225 grams of carbohydrates for a 150-pound or 68-kilogram person after a workout. But far less than this is actually needed or beneficial for glycogen resynthesis. Immediately post-exercise, you should aim for a higher glycemic index carbohydrate source like a bagel, a muffin, pasta, or cereal. Some research shows that a beverage with glucose and fructose might take advantage of certain sugar transporters and allow for the best rate of glycogen resynthesis. The research also shows that adding protein to your carbohydrates after your workout may help to further the increase in glycogen storage and also increase muscle protein synthesis. And it's the ratio of 3 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per 1 gram of protein in the post-workout meal is the general recommendation for these benefits to occur. So now let's go back to the question of the anabolic window. This concept suggests that in order to maximize muscle protein synthesis and prevent protein breakdown, you should consume nutrients as soon as possible after working out. That seems like common sense, right? The quicker you get your fuel back into your cells, the quicker you can build muscle. Well, it's not that easy. While there's plenty of research regarding the window of opportunity, there is beginning to be a new school of thought on this. Don't get me wrong. If you were to ask me, does the anabolic window exist? My answer would be an unwavering yes. But if you were to ask me, is it really a window of opportunity? In other words, is this something you need to take advantage of? My answer would be it depends. There's a scientific evidence to support the idea of an anabolic window, but it appears that it is not as important as we originally thought. For athletes who are competing extremely hard or performing 2 or more workouts per day, then the window of opportunity is very important to maximize muscle glycogen resynthesis and protein synthesis so they can begin the recovery process as soon as possible. They need to train or compete within just a few hours. However, for most individuals, while this window of opportunity still exists, it is not necessary to change your habits to take advantage of it, but doing so may optimize your results. For example, if you work out on Monday morning and then eat normally all day long, by the time you get to your workout on Tuesday morning, you'll have no issue with glycogen storage or protein synthesis. But can you restore or repair faster by consuming the proper nutrients immediately post-workout? Maybe, but if you don't, it's not really a big deal, unless you exercise again within a few hours. I would suggest you shift your focus more to the total amount of protein and carbohydrate you eat over the course of the day, as opposed to hitting the window of opportunity. For improvements in body composition, it is likely a key to understand your total daily needs. I personally aim for a post-workout nutrition shake, but this is part of my normal habit and in line with my current exercise goals. A mistake I see a lot is when people who are interested in fat loss worry too much about pre, during, and post-workout foods. I often see a big pre-workout fuel up, a sports drink during exercise, and then rushing home after the workout to eat again, even though they're still stuffed from all that food, and they only worked out for 45 minutes. This is simply too much. The food doesn't match the goal. It is a clear case of a little bit of information getting way out of control. For this person, some light food to fuel the intense workout would be great. Sipping water during the workout is good too. And then just simply getting into the next appropriate meal filled with lean proteins, healthy vegetables, and fruit, and some whole grains would be just fine. Super easy, super simple. Another area that gets a bit confusing is how often you should eat. This is called meal frequency. How many meals should you eat per day? Well, the information out there is all over the place. Some suggest 3 meals, some suggest 6, some even below or above these recommendations. What about calorie distribution? Should you eat more calories in the morning or at night? Or does it even matter? A study that I helped with a few years back investigated whether a high-protein diet, which was 35% protein, consumed in either 3 or 6 meals per day versus a standard diet of 3 meals per day at 15% protein would improve body composition and metabolism in overweight individuals. To determine what improved body composition would look like, we measured total body fat, abdominal fat, lean body mass, post-meal thermogenesis, or the increase in metabolism following a meal, and leptin production. And leptin is a hormone that regulates hunger. We'll talk more about it in another lecture. Well, we found that total body fat and abdominal fat significantly decreased in both high protein groups. And lean body mass, post-meal thermogenesis, and leptin increased when high protein meals were eaten 6 times per day. So that's pretty great. Just by increasing protein and eating more frequently, you can improve your body composition, improve satiety, and boost metabolism. However, keep in mind that the population in this group was overweight. These results may not carry over to other populations, but it was an interesting finding regardless. The truth of the matter is, if it's not high in protein, consuming 3 versus 6 meals per day doesn't really seem to matter. The Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition reported that as long as we eat the right foods in the right amounts, meal frequency seems to be a matter of personal preference more than anything else. In other words, you can eat a lot of small meals each day, something like consuming a small meal every few hours, or you can eat the traditional 3 big meals each day, and there's almost no physiological difference. Just decide what you like and what fits your life. For me, I've always been a 6 meals per day person. I started this just because I was hungry and I was always running from sport to sport. I know plenty of super fit people who practice this strategy, but I also know people who have excellent body composition who don't like being bothered by eating so much. Again, you need to ask yourself, what works for me? This applies to other topics dealing with nutrient timing too. I could argue to death either side of the eat breakfast or skip breakfast debate, and the same thing goes for should you stack most of your food towards the beginning or end of the day debate. There's evidence and good research to support both arguments. So with all this contradicting information, what do you do? I suggest to try both to see what works best for you. Just keep an open mind. As I mentioned before, nutrition is very individualized, and we're all unique, so one script for what to eat is not appropriate for everybody. There are a few guidelines, but they can be adapted. So what's the bottom line with meal frequency? Eating frequently may help with optimizing some aspects of performance, body composition, and health, but it is likely overemphasized in many people. The general consensus from the research is that the number of meals you eat per day has no benefit except when high protein is involved and maybe only in specific populations. In the end, eating frequently may keep you from feeling over-hungry and gorging at the next meal. But you have to know your eating patterns and habits to see if it will work for your lifestyle. I'm often asked this question too. Can I eat late at night? Well, stay tuned because in the next lecture, I will spend the entire time going through the myths and facts about nighttime eating and discuss a lot of new information on that topic. At this point, I'd like to help you digest all of this information that really seems to go in opposite directions at times. As I've said multiple times, what you do depends on your goals. Athletes have different nutritional needs than the average person, for instance, and even with these two groups, different goals can drastically affect individual approaches to the same problem. Within reason, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to the various aspects of nutrient timing and choices, so long as you're making positive steps towards achieving your goals. Choose whichever plan works for you and your lifestyle. Check with your doctor to make sure it's good for you, and then stick to it. It seems to me that some people are so focused on the nitty-gritty of nutrient timing that they forget about the big picture, which is to improve and optimize your body composition, health, and performance. Focusing too much on meal timing can be stressful, so don't let it be. The less stressful you can make it, the easier it is to incorporate it into your life. Overall, I suggest that you concentrate more on the overall composition of your diet throughout the day and the habits that you can easily change before moving into advanced nutrient timing strategies. The take-home message is this: make sure that you are getting adequate carbohydrates, fats, and proteins and micronutrients throughout the day to fuel your lifestyle. And understand that this may differ drastically from person to person. Then, try some of the various timing strategies that we just went over and see if they work well for you. Try this. Start by eating 6 smaller, protein-rich meals per day to see if it works for your lifestyle and your goals.